Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. Today we're going to be installing EmulationStation for Android. And this is going to be a full setup guide. So I'm going to go through all of the options available to you, configure the emulators for EmulationStation, and so much more. It's a doozy of a guide, so strap in. EmulationStation is a front end for your emulators and ROMs, so you can just easily launch everything from it. You have some nice artwork and descriptions and some cool videos and all of that. And it just makes things easy for you on Android to play all of your retro games. Now, this is just a front end though, so it doesn't have any emulators or ROMs associated with it by itself. You have to provide them all yourself. And we'll get into that a little bit later. I specifically waited to do this video, as I wanted the dust to settle on all of the issues this had, as well as where it was actually hosted. For those that haven't followed the progress of EmulationStation on Android, it first appeared through the Amazon App Store, and then Amazon removed it, and now it's only available through Patreon for $5 US. It's not a subscription, so you could pay the $5 once and then unsubscribe from the Patreon, and you'll still get emails with updates and releases. The developer currently has no plans for this to ever go on the Google Play Store, so this is the only way you'll be able to get this for the foreseeable future. Two warnings though, as of March 2024, which is this video's release. Currently, the front end has no Android app support, and it can't be set as the home launcher in Android by itself. The home launcher part is easily fixable. You could download the app AnyHome from the Google Play Store, and in Android settings, you can set AnyHome as the home app, and that fixes everything. This all works, and when you boot up the device, it boots right into EmulationStation, and if you push the home button on your device, it goes right back. But there's a big problem. If you do this, you now have no way to get back to your Android apps. You lose your browser, you lose any other apps, you lose the Google Play Store, everything. EmulationStation has no Android section, no shortcuts to them, and with it set to home, you can't minimize it or get to them. It's kind of a mess, so I would suggest not setting EmulationStation as your home app. There is an extremely convoluted workaround, and that can get you a way to show your apps and use EmulationStation as your home app, but honestly, I don't consider it a good way to do things, and I won't be showing or explaining it here, as it's not something I feel good supporting. The alternative right now, and what I've personally been doing, is just clicking the EmulationStation app when the device loads, and that's it. It's the old school way of doing things. If those two issues bother you, you might want to just stick with a front end that's a bit more mature, like Daijisho, until EmulationStation is fully working with Android apps and the home launcher. Although EmulationStation does have a lot of positives, even in comparison to Daijisho. The Android apps section, though, is just a necessity. I'll leave my video on setting up Daijisho in the description if you prefer to go that route instead. For everyone else, let's jump right in. For preparation, I would suggest having Solid Explorer File Manager as your file manager app. It's just the best option for Android, and you should just be using it on every Android device. You should also have your ROMs ready to go, either on an SD card or on the device, or somewhere easy to just transfer over to the device, as you're going to be moving them over in a few steps anyway. Emulators are up to you. If you have them installed, then great. If not, no problem. I'm going to show both ways for how to configure EmulationStation for them. But once again, I have a link in my description to a full Android setup guide. After you've signed up for the EmulationStation Patreon, download the APK from the latest release. And you can see the download link right in the post. It would be easier for you to just do this on the PC, and then transfer that APK file over to your device right after. That's what I would do personally. This is also how you can update each time there's an update. It's the same steps. Just copy the APK to your device, and it will show as update instead of install when you open it. Open that APK on your device, install it, and then select Begin Setup once you have it loaded. You now need to grant it permissions, So make sure that you do so by enabling all files access. We now have to select the directory where EmulationStation will store all of its data, including scraped artwork and videos, so I would personally suggest you do this on your SD card with your ROMs if you have one connected. The benefit of that is that you can easily put that card into another Android device with EmulationStation, and it'll keep all of your artwork and everything else, and that's a great thing to see. If you're curious, the folder takes up about 13 gigabytes of space with all of my artwork, videos, and everything, just to give you a benchmark of how much space it uses with a curated ROM list. So I'm not using thousands and thousands of games. Go ahead and navigate to your SD card and create a folder called ES-DE in caps, just on the root of the SD card, and make sure you're naming it exactly that. Then just choose that folder. I already have this folder created, and I have things inside from my previous install, so you can just ignore that part of my screen. Now we have to select or create our ROMs directory. Same thing, I would suggest having this on your SD card, and you want to go ahead and create a folder called ROMs on the root of your SD card, exactly as you see it on screen. Then select Use that folder. Once again, I have mine already created, so you just need to create yours and then select it. Now we want EmulationStation to create all of your ROM subfolders in that ROMs folder, so select Create them. This means it's going to create folders for all of the different systems that it can handle, to make it easy for you to know where you transfer your game ROMs to. Then you can click I understand, and you're probably going to get an error that says no game files are found. That's okay. Click Quit to exit. The reason we're getting that error is because we need at least one single game to be added to a ROM subfolder for us to continue. So what you need to do is navigate to that ROMs folder that we created on the SD card, and you can now see that each folder inside is a system folder. It should be pretty obvious here, but you want to put your ROMs for each system in the corresponding folder. There is a lot of systems. You don't have to fill each folder up, just the systems that you care about. So for example, you can see that in my SNES folder, I have my Super Nintendo ROMs, and so on and so forth. Here's a special trick for PlayStation 1 games that use multiple discs, because otherwise you're going to get duplicate entries in EmulationStation. Inside of the PSX folder, create a folder for the game that has multiple discs, matching the exact same game name. So for Chrono Cross, you can see the folder matches the game name exactly, minus the disk number, and then you want to add a .m3u to the end. Then inside of that folder, put your game files and multiple disks, and you want to create a new file with the same name as the ROM again, minus the disk number, and add .m3u to it. Edit that file, and the only thing you need to do is add the full game name, with disk number and file type to each line. You can see that I have two lines, one for each Chrono Cross disk, and the full name with extension. Do these same steps for any games that you have that have multiple disks, and it'll keep your PS1 ROMs nice and tidy in EmulationStation. Feel free to move all of your ROMs over into their folders now, and then come back when you're ready to move on. With all of your ROMs added, open the ESDE app, and it should just bring you to the main system page where you can scroll back and forth and see all of the systems for the ROMs that you added. You also likely noticed a touchscreen popped up, and we'll take care of that along with some other settings now. One thing to note, Vita does not currently work as the Vita 3K emulator doesn't have front-end support, so just skip Vita games for now. Push Start, then head to Input Device Settings, and disable Touch Overlay. This removes the on-screen touch display, and unless you're using a touchscreen-only device, you don't need this. Back out and head to Game Collection Settings, then Automatic Game Collections, and feel free to select what you want to see. Personally, I want Last Played and Favorites as options on the home screen, so I can easily get to my favorites or to my last played quickly. And let's head to UI Settings, then Theme Downloader, and it'll take a bit of time for it to download the options, but after that you can scroll through and pick the theme that you want to use. Personally, I like Artbook Next, and that's the one I'm going to select. Back out one and change theme to the one that you chose, so Artbook Next for me. When you back out again, you'll see that your home screen changed to the theme that you chose. Next, we can scrape our ROMs and games to get artwork, videos, and all of that. So push Start, and then head to Scraper, and now you can change a few things here. Under Scrape These Games, you can choose to scrape all games, or there's other options, like if you're only missing metadata, and more. For Scrape These Systems, you can choose the systems that you want to scrape. Then, under Account Settings, this is an actual mandatory step, but you'll want to input your account information from screenscraper.fr. That's the website that provides all of this data, and you'll need an account for this to really work. For content settings, mix image settings, and other settings, you can pretty much leave them all as default unless you really know what you want to change. Then just click Start, and you're now going to be stuck in a window while the program scrapes what you chose, and this could take a very long time. I would personally suggest maybe doing one system at a time and then maybe once every day or something when you're not using the device, instead of all the systems at once. Because if you do all of the systems at once and you have a lot of games, you could be stuck on this screen for an entire day or longer. You can always click Stop and continue where you left off by changing the Scrape These Settings section to No Metadata if you need to do it in the future. Once that's done, you can now see all of the nice artwork and videos and description right next to the games in the game list. And if you stay selected on the game, you'll see the video. Just gives it a bit more of a complete feeling and makes it feel like we're actually in a game launcher. If you run into a game that didn't get scraped, find the game in the game list, push Select, and go to Edit this game's metadata. Scroll down to Scrape, and it's going to try and find options to present to you on the right. If you're happy with one of them, just push A on it to save it. But if none of these work, jump back a screen to the Edit Metadata screen and try changing the game name to see if that helps you find a match. It's a little bit of a game, but sometimes you just won't find the game no matter what you do. So the other option is, after you've scraped your entire library with Screen Scraper, head back to Scraper, and then change Scrape From to the Games DB, and then change Scrape These Games to No Metadata. Then try scraping. That'll only try scraping games that Screen Scraper didn't find. Now, as of EmulationStation version 3.0.019, which is this video's release, the developer decided to remove Yuzu as an emulator option for Switch games, for obvious reasons, but we can add it back. There's two files that you just need to add in. I'll leave a link in the description to the two files, and you just need to drop them into your es-de/custom_systems folder. I'm doing it on my PC since it's just easier that way, but head to the GitHub and click into each file, then the download raw option on the right for both. Then just simply copy and paste both files into that folder that I mentioned. So it's es-de and the custom_systems folder. Open the EmulationStation app on your device and you're all set. You can double check by heading to Start, Other Settings, Alternative Emulators, and if you see Switch as an option, then you're set. Future app updates might remove or delete these files, so keep this guide handy in case it does, and you can just re-add them back following the same instructions. Now we come to the fun part, and this is configuring emulators, and it's going to be a bit of a doozy. Push Start, then Other Settings, Alternative Emulators, and now you can see which systems you have available to you. All of these systems match which ROMs you've loaded, and which emulators that EmulationStation wants to use. If you select each system, you can see the emulator options and core options for RetroArch. This will be the section that trips up most users. The simple reason why is that this is all user dependent, and what EmulationStation chooses as default doesn't always match what you have installed. I don't know what emulators or cores you're using. I know the ones that I suggest and I have in all of my video guides, but you might have come into this with your own setup. And that's what you'll need to know in order to handle this section. If you've followed my guides, then pretty much all of what you see on screen should match what your system looks like, with the possible exceptions being Melon DS standalone, since I'm preferring to use that nowadays, and as well, I'm using SwanStation as a RetroArch core instead of using DuckStation standalone for PlayStation 1. But again, this is the most important section of the video because without the right options selected here, your games just won't run and they won't open. Now, if this is a fresh device and this is the first thing you've installed, I have an Android emulation setup guide that you can follow, and I'm going to put the selections on screen if you followed that guide. Just come back and pause here if you need to, and I'm going to move on. Otherwise, you're going to have to select the options that match the emulators for what you have on your device. If you really wanted, you could try changing the selection, try to boot up a game and see if it works. And if it does, you have the right option. If not, you have the wrong one. That's the throwing darts at a board way, and it might be the best way for some of you. But anyways, for the people out there that do have emulators already installed, there's more things we have to do here because as is, even if you select the right emulators, there's a big chance that they still won't load, and we need to fix them. So before you start throwing darts at a board, do these steps first. What you have to do is go into each emulator, and you have to make sure that the emulator is searching the right ROM directory. So, for example, if you have Aether SX2 or Nether SX2 installed, and your ROMs were previously somewhere else, and then we moved them to the EmulationStation ROMs folder, then now we have to point those emulators to that new folder. By not doing so, your games just won't run. You'll have to do these steps for each emulator as well. I'm going to show you a few of the more popular emulators here and what to do, and hopefully that gives you the right idea for any that I don't show. For RetroArch, there's nothing you need to do. If you're using a RetroArch core for a system, and you get a black screen or the game doesn't load, that means either you don't have the core installed or you picked the wrong core. The right core will load. Dolphin Official is the worst, and it's the trickiest. Right now in Dolphin, if you change your path to another folder, even if it's the same games, you're going to get duplicates everywhere. Each game will duplicate and it's a mess. Special thanks to Jade for figuring this out, but what you need to do is use Solid Explorer File Manager. I can't confirm if any other app has the right permissions to do this, but you want to head to Internal Storage, Android, data, org.dolphinmu.dolphinmu. You might need to grant permissions at this stage, so just do so. Then head into Files, Config, and you want to open dolphin.ini, and you can use the SE text editor to do so. Look for the lines that have ISO path to start, and delete each of those lines. Then just open Dolphin and pick the new folders for both GameCube and Wii, and you're all set. For Aether SX2 and Nether SX2, head to Settings, top left, App Settings, Game List, and delete the path that's there. Then click the plus sign bottom right and navigate to the ROMs PS2 folder, and add it. For Melon DS, head to Settings, top right, ROMs, and change the search directory to ROMs NDS. For PPSSPP, head to Games at the top, Browse, then to ROMs PSP, and use that folder. For Citra, head to Settings, top left, select Games folder, and navigate to ROMs and 3DS. For Yuzu, head to Settings, top left, Manage Game Folders, and delete the existing one. Then click the plus sign bottom right and navigate to ROMs, Switch, and use that folder. Once you have all of your emulators fixed, there's not much more you have to do. Jump into some games and have fun. Keep an eye on the bottom of the screen for more options for each title, like adding to favorites and all of that. But otherwise, there isn't really anything else you need to do or change or touch. This was a full, complete setup guide. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.